Now, originally I had planned to, I kind of got with a sermon early in the week. I kind of just planned something. The story of Philemon is just an incredible story, and it's a story of transformation. And, I wanted the place to be filled with laughter and with joy, and make an invitation to transformation. And, sometimes, though, laughter and joy, they have to stop in the vestibule and go no further. Sometimes there's just prayer and the Word of God that must fill the sanctuary. And this is one of those mornings. This is not what I intended to talk about, but there was an event that happened on Thursday that really had a deep impact on me personally, but on many of you as well. Now, this is going to be, strange to some of you if it's your first time with us. If you've been with us for a while, you know that Ty Schenzel, and he's probably been up on the stage a dozen times. He was the founder of the Hope Center along with his wife, Terry. They were killed in a car accident on Thursday, so most of you probably know this. If this is the first you've heard it, I'm sorry you had to hear it here. It was one of those things, and Ty was, you've heard him if you've been here for long. The last time he was here was in February. It's right around my birthday. I was sick with the flu. It was a Saturday night. I knew he was the first person I called. I said, man, I'm sick. I'm getting worse. Are you free tomorrow? And, just within a few moments, I had, one of the great preachers in Omaha, agreeing to be with us the next morning. His wife got on the phone. They prayed with me. That's just the kind of people they were. Terry, she was behind the scenes, as good as Ty was up front. Terry was the detail person. She was good. Her gifts of administration, her gifts of leadership were so evident in the creation of the Hope Center. Some of you in our women's ministry, you've heard her, talk to you before. I remember the first time I met them. It was Terry I actually talked to first. She called me up. This was like 7 or 8 years ago, and she had introduced herself. I didn't know who she was, and she talked about the Hope Center. I'd heard about that a little bit, and I didn't have my calendar with me at the time, and I said, well, I'll just get back to you. And my definition of getting back to her and her definition of getting back to me were two different things. So like a week later, she called me up and just basically said, we're going to meet. I get to choose where and when. And I was at the Scooters at 180th and Q Street, and I got there. I was 5 minutes late. I'm 5 minutes late everywhere. So they were there. Their coffee was about half gone. They thought it was really weird that I didn't like coffee, and I thought it was really weird that they thought it was weird I didn't like coffee. And I thought that they were probably going to just ask for money. It's what they do. And, as a church, we're able to help out. So I enjoy those conversations. And they never once did that. Not one time. They said, hey, we just heard about this new church. I think we were at Russell at the time. Maybe we had just moved here. It was one of the two. And they said, tell us about yourself. Tell us about, and for an hour, they just listened to the dreams about the church. They listened to, the dreams about my kids, and they listened to my story. They listened to my fears. At the end of the conversation, they prayed for me. Didn't ask a darn thing of me. I went down to the Hope Center a few weeks later, and I saw the most amazing thing. I saw the way that the kids there related to Ty. It was just amazing, this white guy about my height, about my size, walking around, and these kids absolutely loved him. And I processed it. I figured out why. They loved him because he loved them first. His love was infectious. The reason that you like to listen to him. I was always a little insecure when Ty was around because he's one of the people I know that's actually funnier than I am. Just that he was a joy to listen to. But the reason that he was so good at what he did is his just love for people. I mean, when he was talking up here, you just sensed that, he cared about you. He loved you. Most of you didn't even know him. You didn't talk to him, but you knew him. And you knew he cared about you. They're going to be doing a marriage event for us later this year. He was going to speak later this year. They were they were as good as they come. And their story is a story of transformation. That's what God is about transformation. I want to talk about what transformation is. So for all of you biologists, transformation is when one cell gives its DNA to another cell. So cell A joins cell B, and cell B gains the attributes of cell A. So let's look at the text that we just looked at. So Paul was transformed by God. Now, Paul knew about transformation. Paul was a Jew. He was from the tribe of Benjamin. He was a Pharisee. He was a persecutor of Christians. And then one day, cell A entered cell B. God entered Paul's life. You know, Peter was the first leader in the church, but Paul was the one that took it to a whole different level. When God gets a hold of people and transforms people, it's an amazing thing. Now, Philemon, he would have been transformed as well. He would have been a landowner. He would have been fairly wealthy. But Paul is very clear. He says, hey, you owe your salvation to me. I want you to remember that. So we know that there was a transformation in his life. You know, he probably went from like overworked and materialistic and, you know, power hungry or something like that to a child of God, a brother and sister to Jesus Christ. What a great transformation. You know, Onesimus, his transformation here is probably the biggest. He would have been a slave to Philemon. He escaped. He committed some crime. He was in prison. You know, so like slave, on the run, did something bad, in prison. And then all of a sudden, he gets a cellmate named Paul. And if you're around 2,000 years ago and your cellmate's named Paul, your life is going to change. And Paul got a hold of this guy, and his life changed. And Paul wrote this letter to Philemon, and it said, hey, this guy's your slave, but you got this letter, and I want you to read it. He's different now. This transformation has happened. You know, cell A has entered cell B, and cell B is a whole lot different. He's no longer a slave. He's no longer a criminal. He's your brother in Christ. Now, you don't find this in the Bible. You do find this in church history. One of the early bishops in the church, guess what his name was? It was Onesimus. The transformation happened from a slave who has done something bad in prison, you know, to this bishop in the early church. You know, the sinner who is now full of grace. Not only now full of grace, but he's like the head grace giver. You know, as I look at, you know, Ty and Terry, I see transformation. I mean, they were transformed a long time ago, and what they did is they just let everybody experience that. You know, I was thinking, like, you know, for all of us, I wonder, like, as we think about this transformation, maybe we think it's for someone like Paul, maybe we think it's for someone like Onesimus, maybe we think it's for someone like Ty and Terry, but, you know, we're not any of those people. Well, the news is that you are one of those people, and the transformation happens. Now, yesterday morning, I did something really cool. You know, we're doing our own small group curriculum this fall. If you haven't signed up for a small group yet, just fill this thing out, join a small group. But we're doing our own 11-week curriculum this fall for our small groups. And in each of the 11 weeks, we're kind of talking about, like, basically, like, who we are, who we hope to become, who God is, all that sort of stuff. And every week, one of you is given, like, a short, probably like 3 or 4 minute testimony. So we rented out a studio yesterday morning, and 5 of you came and gave your testimony. And what your testimony was a testimony of transformation. You know, in week 1, he filmed his yesterday. You're going to see a guy that in his testimony, he describes himself as a person who was caught up in sin, as a person that had destructive and self-destructive behaviors. And now he's the one who's receiving God's grace. He's the one that's sharing that grace with other people. Transformation happens. We had a really cool one. There's 2 high school kids. You're going to hear this one in week 3. And they're talking about, like, one of the kids invited the other kid to the mission trip. You know, the kid went on the mission trip. He liked it so much. He started coming to church with us about a year ago. He had to walk to church. You know, so he walks to church. His mom, like, figures out, well, this kid's walking to church. There must be something there. So she starts coming to church. Her fiance comes to church. I had their wedding, like, 15 days ago. You can see that, like, transformation, it happens here. You know, we had 2 women that shared their experience in a small group. You'll hear theirs in week 2. Neither of them grew up in a church, Neither of them had been active in a church. Now they're in this small group where they can be accepted, where they can ask questions, where they can hear God's voice through other people. Transformation is happening all around us. And I invite all of us to be open to the transformation that God is wanting to do in us. Now, as we think about transformation, it's not going to be easy. You're not going to listen to me talk for 25 minutes this morning and say, okay, well, gosh, that's really cool. I'm totally transformed. The process is done. I'm perfect. I'm just not that good of a preacher, and, it just doesn't work out that way. Now, struggle and structure and work. Listen to this. Struggle and structure and work are going to lead to growth, renewal, and transformation. Growth, renewal, and transformation does not happen without some struggle and without some structure and without some work. So think about this. Like you had the caterpillar, like the cute little caterpillar, and then like there's a butterfly. Now, I don't know if you guys know this, but do you know that butterfly was once a caterpillar? It's really cool. Now, what happens is like the caterpillar, it's like, I didn't know that. The caterpillar pushes this button, and then it just becomes a butterfly. It's really cool. No, there's this intermediate stage called chrysalis. And have you ever seen this, a video of it, or maybe even in real life? Like this caterpillar is just struggling. It's got all this goop, and it's getting these muscles, and it's trying to escape from this thing. And what's happening when this is going on? It's getting stronger, isn't it? It's preparing itself for this transformation. And then when it gets strong enough, what happens is this butterfly can just take off and fly, and it's like this beautiful thing. Now, it can't happen without the struggle. The struggle has to happen before the transformation can occur. Now, in order for a cell to be transformed, so all you biology students, here's your last thing for today. It must be in a state of what's called competence. So competence has to happen before transformation. Competence means that it's in a state where it is able and willing to be transformed. You have to be in a state where you're both able and willing to be transformed. God is trying to work in all of us. So let's move ourselves to the state of competence where we're able and willing to be transformed. So probably the best way to describe this, if you've ever been to my house, right when you walk in the foyer, there's a little table. It's got some pictures and this little candle on there. And this table is this, I think it's a beautiful table. It's oak. But I bought this table, I'm guessing, probably about 7 or 8 years ago. And when I bought the table, it was pink. Now, I knew right when I saw this table, I had to have it. I was at this antique store, and it said $30, and I said, hey, I'm going to buy that table over there. And she says, well, how much is that? I said, yes, $30. And she says, well, how much are you willing to pay for it? I said, no, $30. And she says, no one pays full price here. You have to bargain. I said, I'll give you $25. And she goes, I'll take 28. I'm like, $27.50 is as high as I'm going to go on this one. So after the tax, it was exactly $30, and got my $30 table. And so this table is the exact same table. There's nothing different about it than the table that I grew up at in my Grandpa Adolph and Elva's house. So Janie, you remember the table? My sister's here, and we had meals at this table. We had the kumlin, the lefsen, the lutefisk, and the rutabagas and the turnips. I mean, we thought that was normal growing up. That's what Norwegians eat. And when I was 18, I went to college. I discovered a hamburger, and it was the best day of my life. But what I had to do is I had to take the paint off. So I did this. You can see my house from Harrison Street. I put some tarps out there, and I scraped all the old paint off. Then I had this layer of polyurethane on there. I had to scrape the polyurethane off, and it has all these little details, and I had a toothbrush, and I got this thing all ready. What I did is I made it competent for the transformation. I mean, I just couldn't rub Danish oil on the pink paint and have it be this beautiful piece of oak furniture. I had to make it competent. I sanded it, I got out the Danish oil, I put the Danish oil on, I sanded it some more, and it had 7 coats of Danish oil. Now, you walk in there to my house, you think, oh, it's an old table, it's kind of cool. I look at that table, and every time I look at it, there's memories. There's those, he used to make canned applesauce, and I used to go down their cellar, and I would like take the applesauce and I'd eat it, and that's what I see when I remember that table. But the competency has to come before the transformation. Now, I want you to think about this. I just thought about this morning. The same Jesus who turned water into wine can transform your home, your life, your family, your future. He is still in the miracle working business. His business is still the business of transformation. Now, if you look up the word transformation in the Bible, the Greek word here is metamorpho. What this means, metamorphosis, is where we get our English word. It means, to change from one place to another. Cell A becomes, integral in cell B. We only find the word just a couple times in the New Testament. One of them is going to be in Romans chapter 12, verses 1 and 2, where the Bible says, don't copy the behavior and customs of this world, but let God transform you into a new person by changing the way that you think. So now all of a sudden, we're thinking like God. And what happens when we think like God? We start to speak like God. And what happens when we start to think and speak like God? We start to act like God, and this process of transformation happens. God is real. God is alive. God changes lives. There's one more I want to look at. It's 2 Corinthians chapter 5, verses 16 and 17. So we have stopped evaluating others from a human point of view. Like this right there is just rich stuff. Like, let's just stop looking at other people and judging them from human points of view. At one point, we thought of Christ merely from a human point of view. How differently we know him now. This means that anyone who belongs to Christ has become a new person. The old life is gone. The new life has begun. God starts to influence us. God comes into our life. God changes us. God transforms us. Now, as I was thinking about Ty and Terry the last few days, their ministry was a ministry of transformation. It really was. They were at a church up on Dodge Street, and he had a job there as a youth pastor, and he was good. I mean, he could have went anywhere and done anything. He was that anointed. He was that blessed. He was that hardworking. But God gave him this vision to start this ministry in North Omaha. And I want you to hear this, because this applies to you. Like, when God gives you a vision, don't run from it. Embrace it. Now, your vision is going to be different than that. It is. But God is going to give you visions for your life. God is going to give you dreams for your life. God is going to give you goals for your life. Don't run from them. Embrace them. It was a ministry of transformation. He wanted to transform, and he did for a large part. Like, what was going on? He saw those kids, and he looked at those kids, and he saw that they didn't have hope. I just read the newspaper some morning if you don't believe me. And what he wanted to do is he wanted to transform the hopeless into the hopeful. He wanted to take the kids out of the jails and into a job, off the streets and into a school. What it was a ministry of transformation. I remember one time Ty and I went out to our church property together. This was probably like a couple years ago, and we didn't have the streets yet, and we pulled into one of those kind of like off things, and he didn't want to just stay in the car. He wanted to go out, and we walked the land together, and he's like, Craig, I want to tell you what I see. I just see like a church here, and I see a parking lot, and I see a great big cross. And like at that time, the property wasn't developed much on the other side of us, and he says there's going to be houses, there's going to be apartments, there's going to be commercial buildings, and there's going to be a big cross. And the big cross is going to be taller than anything else out there, and you're going to offer hope. This church is going to offer hope. God is going to offer hope to the thousands of people that pass by this every day. He's getting all emotional when he's saying that. He just loves this city. He loved this city. He loved the people of this city. And I looked at him, and you've heard me and him talk about this before. This is when I got the vision. I said, Ty, I was thinking about this, and like, there's no church in Omaha that is further away geographically from the Hope Center than the Water's Edge. But I told him, I said, I really want, like in the future, for there to be no church that's closer to the heartbeat of the Hope Center than the Water's Edge. I said, I believe in you. I believe in your vision. I believe in the God who has called you to this place. You know, last year we put on that midnight run. He's spoken here. You've given the Hope Center tens of thousands of dollars over the years. You've given them thousands of volunteer hours. I remember, Ty and I mean, we're not the same, but we're not too far different. I mean, I'm a church planter. His church looks a lot different than mine, but, you know, he's a church planter too. And, you know, I know where him and Terry were coming from. You know, they gave their lives for this thing. One tear, one broken dream, one broken life, one success, one donor at a time. Like, I have it easy. Like, y'all, you're so generous. Like, you take care of me, you take care of this church. I've never once had to worry about where my paycheck is coming from, and there's never a day that I'm not grateful for that. You know, that wasn't the same for them. You know, they have these kids, and they're trying to raise money to get this thing going. It wasn't easy, but there's this story of transformation. Like, I don't spend a lot of time on Facebook. I kind of post some pictures there once in a while and make some interesting comments, but I just spent, I was in my office on Friday just by myself, and I was looking at their pages, and it was so cool just to see how two people partner with God in transforming so many. Now, they're ordinary people. They're no different than any of us. Yeah, they're blessed, they're gifted. But this is what God does. When God gets a hold of us, what God does is he changes lives. And when he changes our lives, he'll change other lives through us. Now, there's one more type of transformation that I want to talk about, and it's the most important type altogether. So on Thursday, they were traveling, and there was an accident. Both Ty and Terry died in that accident. But what happened was, in the end, the final transformation, where God takes our earthly body and makes it a heavenly soul. Now, I want to go back to that word, competence. Now, Ty and Terry were totally ready for that day. They didn't, and none of us thought that it would happen so soon. But they were ready. They were competent. They were ready for the final transformation. Now, Jesus tells us so many times that we don't know the hour, we don't know the day when the Son of Man will appear. We just don't know. There could be some sort of act of nuclear terrorism where God has to come back for all of us at once. And the question is, are we competent? There could be an accident, there could be cancer, there could be a disease, it could be whatever. And competence makes transformation possible. I was looking at this verse on Friday and looked at it yesterday, I looked at it this morning, and it's one of the verses I always go to when I have more questions than I have answers. When my heart is broken, it's the verse that I often go to, and it's at the end of Paul's 13th chapter to the Corinthians in book 1. I'm going to paraphrase it, but Paul says, now what we see, now today, what we see, those of us here on earth, what we see is looking into a scratched, dimly lit mirror. We only see in part. But when that final transformation appears, we are going to see fully. We are going to see God face to face. We are going to spend eternity with the one who has created us in the beginning. Jesus says that I am the Alpha and the Omega, the first and the last, the beginning and the end. We are his idea. When we are transformed, we are going to be with him forever in heaven. And then he concludes, but until that point, there's three things that remain: faith, hope, and love. And of these, the greatest is love.